So after all the midweek action in the Championship, we are back for our score predictions. Let's jump into them. Guys, we've got plenty to discuss in today's video. Obviously, we had a handful of games going on over midweek, which we'll be discussing throughout today's video, but we are here to make our score predictions going into the weekend. So as always, get yours down below. And without any further ado, let's jump into them. So starting out with tonight's game, we've got Bournemouth going up against Nottingham Forest. A really interesting matchup for a side going for automatic promotion and a side very much in the hunt for the top six at the moment. Now, I'd argue that neither team was quite at their firing best at the weekend, but both ended up picking up decent results. You know, Nottingham Forest, given the circumstances of Samba picking up that red card, managed to scab the point against Stoke in the end with that late equaliser. Samba obviously will be suspended going into this match, and while Bournemouth were by no means at their best against Blackpool at Bloomfield Road, they turned it around late on, and it's moments like that that decide, you know, promotion winning teams and a team getting over the line in the end and into second place. I was looking at Bournemouth's bench the other day against Blackpool, and really it's only Fulham who can compete with this sort of quality off the bench. The likes of Freddie Woodman, Chris Mentham, Emiliano Marcondes, Jamal Lowe, Ben Pearson, Leif Davis. The quality is absolutely endless within this Bournemouth squad at the moment, and while they might not be at their firing best at the moment, they have won their last 3 matches. Going up against a Forest side, it'll be interesting to see how Ethan Horvath is coming in for this one, as obviously Samba will be suspended. Cooper will make Forest very tough to break down, and we have seen Bournemouth and Scott Parker tactically come a little bit unstuck at times this season in some of these bigger matches, but I just think that the star quality of this Bournemouth side may sway it in their favour for this one. I'm going to go 2-1 Bournemouth. Thief is going 1-0 Forest. Could very much go either way, that one. Next then to Craven Cottage, and to another really interesting game for a team going for automatic promotion and one team vying for the top 6. We've got Fulham going up against Huddersfield. Now, last weekend I thought that maybe Huddersfield's unbeaten run may come to an end, but in the end it was another goalless draw for them, and actually their 3rd consecutive clean sheet in the Championship, which was quite impressive. Lee Nichols has been one of, if not the best goalkeepers in the league so far this season for me, and in general Huddersfield have looked quite resolute defensively. You know, I mentioned it when they came to Deepdale the other week in midweek. They look quite good at the back. Going up against the Fulham side though, who will absolutely test them to the max when it comes to putting that pressure on their back line. You know, if they can get through this one with a clean sheet, I would be seriously impressed. But listen, Huddersfield have been the side who have constantly been proving me wrong so far this season, so while I do think I am going to back a Fulham win and that Huddersfield unbeaten streak to come to an end, Huddersfield have proved me wrong more than once this season, so I'm going to go 2-1 Fulham. Thief is going to go 2-0 Fulham. I don't think it'll be a drubbing where Fulham get like 5 or 6 like we've seen them do at times this season. I think that Huddersfield will hold out for quite a while, but I just think that star power of Fulham gets them over the line in this one. Next then to Ewood Park for Blackburn up against Millwall. Now Blackburn will of course be looking to return to winning ways after quite a drought has hit them recently, but you could feel that maybe Millwall will sense their opportunity to strike on a weakened Blackburn side coming into this game, particularly with Blackburn being without Ben Brereton Diaz. At the moment, we're not sure the extent of his injury. I think it was a twisted ankle in the end, but he'll at least be missing for this weekend against Millwall, and that's less than ideal news given Blackburn have really struggled in the final third lately. They've only scored 1 goal now in their last 6 Championship matches, which is really quite damning for a side which at one point looked like they could push Bournemouth all the way this season. Millwall themselves had a couple of decent wins for them, albeit they've not been the most effective side on the road so far this season. I think they're 17th in the form table for away teams in the Championship this season, but it does have a sort of low scoring feeling about it. Maybe 1 goal either way goes on to win this one. But I'm going to go for another 0-0 draw for Blackburn, I think. I'm going to go for a goalless one with FIFA going 2-0 Blackburn. Next then to Ashton Gate for Bristol City up against Middlesbrough. I think it's fair to say that Nigel Pearson at the moment isn't a very happy football manager. After Bristol City's most recent game against Swansea, he was left absolutely fuming at full time after how his side had defended a few of those Swansea goals. And that's been an all too familiar familiar pattern with Bristol City lately, and coming into this game against a fit and firing Middlesbrough side isn't exactly ideal for them. Middlesbrough, I thought, looked really quite good last time out, really clinical in front of goals. They put 4 goals past Derby. It finally feels like Balogun and Connolly especially are starting to gel together moving forward. Isaiah Jones was absolutely unplayable at the weekend against Derby, as he grabbed a handful of assists in that game as well. And I think that myself, along with quite a few others, are probably leaning towards that Middlesbrough 3 points in this one. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Middlesbrough because Bristol City definitely have a goal in them. FIFA's gone for 0-0 draw. Next then for Cardiff up against Blackpool. It's the Ryan Wintle derby going into this one, but a tough game to call, I think. Cardiff won again in midweek, 2-0 against Coventry. 2 lovely second half strikes, wrapping that up for them. And to be honest, Cardiff have looked fairly decent at home recently. They've won their last 3 home matches in quite convincing fashion by an aggregate scoreline of 8-1, coming up against the Blackpool side who, in fairness, got a little bit unlucky at the weekend. I thought they had a catalogue of chances against Bournemouth and on another day would have at least got a point, you know. The Josh Bowler goal was an absolutely fantastic strike, and while you've got players like Bowler, you know, even someone like CJ Hamilton who's really coming into form at the moment, Blackpool are always capable of being threats, particularly on transitions from those wide areas. But the area where Blackpool are a little bit weakened at the moment and where Cardiff can look to take advantage is at centre half. You know, Richard Keogh has recently been ruled out with an injury for them, and in that Bournemouth game, Ekpiteta also went off with an injury, which I believe is a hamstring one. So the double whammy there for Blackpool. If Cardiff put this sort of experienced centre half up against, you know, Thornley, who's, you know, done a job to step in so far, and whoever else it might be filling in, could get the better of them if they throw sort of Jordan Hugill and Ikpeatsu up against this Blackpool defence, which is a little bit threadbare at the moment. And for that reason, I think Cardiff could just edge this one. Wouldn't be surprised at a draw, but Cardiff seem to be on the roll at home at the moment. I'm going to go 2-1 Cardiff, with FIFA going at 1-0 Blackpool. Next then to Coventry up against Barnsley. Coventry not at their best in midweek, quite poor actually in that 2-0 defeat to Cardiff, and it sort of summed up Coventry in this second half of the season, which has been a very sort of up and down, hit and miss, inconsistent time, which it's quite tough to put your finger on where Coventry are at as a team at the moment, because they were so good at the start of the season and now they're just sort of meandering their way towards the end of the season without any real sort of purpose about their play at this point in time. Barnsley finally got back to winning ways at the weekend. Domingos Quina might be the key to getting them back on track in the league. Will they make it 2 out of 2? I'm not sure. We have seen a little bit more from Barnsley in terms of attacking endeavour, having more shots on goal, getting into positions. You know, Colton Morris leading the line for them, with Domingos Quina working in those positions behind them, has worked fairly well so far. But both teams have an inconsistent streak to them, and I think that it's Coventry that may get back to winning ways in this one. I'm not at a stage yet where I'm comfortable with backing Barnsley after just 1 win, so I'm going to go 2-1 Coventry. FIFA's going at 1-0 Barnsley, which would be a massive result. Next up then, and for me the biggest game of the weekend, we've got Derby going up against Peterborough in an absolutely huge crunch match at the bottom of the Championship. Now, Wayne Rooney's already said that from Derby's perspective this is a must-win game. I think that Darren Ferguson will be saying a similar thing for Peterborough, because if Derby win this match, suddenly I think that everyone at the club will be filled with belief and they'll just go into the mindset that survival is fully on the cards from them from this point. If they lose this match, however, it's a real hammer blow to their season. And I already think that Derby might be looking back on some of the matches that they've already had this season and looking back on a few missed regrets. You know, the game they had earlier on in the season against Peterborough when they lost it in the last minute, the game against Barnsley being another example of that. But Derby just need to dust themselves down from that quite poor display they had against Middlesbrough and put it all on the line for this one, because it's a Peterborough side who are not playing well at the moment. They've not scored in their last 4 matches. I think their last 2 games especially have been massive missed opportunities for Peterborough, which is how I think you can sum up their entire season. Preston weren't great against them at the weekend. We managed to get the win in the end, and Reading were there for the taking at times, and that ended as a goalless draw, which didn't do Peterborough any favours whatsoever. So for a score prediction in this one, I think it's got to be Derby that I'm leaning towards. I'm going to go 1-0 Derby. I think they've got a little bit more character about them, if I'm totally honest. FIFA's going for a 1-1 draw. yeah, both teams desperately need 3 points there. Next then to Kenilworth Road for Luton up against West Brom. Two sides who are chasing the top 6 at the moment. West Brom, I'd say there's more pressure on. Obviously, Steve Bruce doesn't really have the luxury of having a bedding in time with this squad. He really needs to hit the ground running, and after a loss and a defeat in his first 2 matches, suddenly it's looking like a bit of an uphill battle to claw back those positions above them. They're already 3 points off the top 6, with Middlesbrough having played a game less. These two sides are currently sat next to each other in the table as well. Luton, having played a game less than West Brom, have got just 1 less point, so if we were to go off points per game, Luton have been the more efficient side out of these two so far this season. Now, Luton, and I think this has been the case throughout the season really, have been a really tough side to put your finger on, because at their best, they're capable of taking points off the best teams in the Championship, but at their worst, they can be really bad, and that's what we saw last time out in their 3-0 defeat to Birmingham. Luton generally tend to get a bounce though, particularly at Kenilworth Road. But I'm going to go for, I think, a draw is what I'm fancying in this one. West Brom in the final third, even under Bruce so far, still haven't quite looked at their cutting best. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw with FIFA going 1-0 Luton. Next then, and to another massive game in Reading season as they travel to Deepdale for this one. Now, over recent years, Reading have been a little bit of a bogey side for Preston, if I'm totally honest. Preston have only won 1 of their last 8 meetings against Reading. No doubt Preston are coming into this one as the favourites, going off the league table standings, the form book at the moment. Preston on a nice unbeaten run at the moment, unbeaten in our last 6 Championship matches. Our game at the weekend against Peterborough didn't have the most amount of quality in it, but Cameron Archer is someone who just comes up with moments, and what's been most impressive about North End recently is the clean sheets we're keeping. You know, that was a real far cry and our real weakness at the start of the season, but we seem to have turned the corner in that aspect since Ryan Lowe has come in. For Reading, things looking really grim there at the moment. The scenes at sort of full time after their goalless draw with Peterborough, which didn't really do them any favours, to be honest with you. It has stopped the rot in terms of that losing streak, but it's now 11 games without a win for Reading. Don't get me wrong, they still have star power and they definitely still have goals in them, and that's what does concern me a little bit coming into this game, because eventually Reading will win a football match just through the quality of someone like Swift or Zhao coming up with a moment. But the level at which they're playing at the moment, Paunovic seeming like a dead man walking, that disconnect between the fans, I think I've got to back Preston for this one. I'm going to go 2-1 Preston with FIFA going for a 1-1 draw. Next then to QPR up against Hull, both sides involved in midweek action. QPR had another quite disappointing defeat at Millwall, 2-0 in that game. We said going into that one that off the back of that defeat against Barnsley, an away trip to the Den was never going to be easy for QPR, and in the end it's what transpired that way. Hull on the other hand have been going through a pretty tough run recently in terms of the fixture pile-up that they've had, but a solid point I thought in midweek against Sheffield United. Looked quite resolute for that game. They limited to Sheffield United to just, I think, 3 shots on target in the end for that one, and when you're a side who isn't scoring a lot of goals at the moment, you know, they've only scored 1 in their last 4 matches, having that solid foundation and basis about your backline is absolutely crucial. And to be fair to him, I think that Matt Ingram has done a fairly decent job since he's come back into the frame as well. With QPR faltering, and listen, it was always going to be tough for them to keep the pace with, you know, the top 2 for the rest of the season. I think that other teams in and around the playoff picture are going to have a bit of a stumble. You know, we're seeing both QPR and Blackburn have that at the same time at the moment, but with QPR not quite in their groove at the moment, Hull don't tend to score all too many goals. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw in this game. FIFA's going 1-0 QPR. Could very much go either way, that one. Next then to Bramall Lane for Sheffield United up against Swansea. Sheffield United having a little bit of a frustrating time at the moment with back-to-back goalless draws, which has meant that they've lost a little bit of ground on the teams above them in the top 6 hunt. Midweek, quite a frustrating performance, which was, dare I say, a little bit similar to sort of what we were seeing at the start of the season with Sheffield United in terms of plenty of possession, but no real penetration. I particularly think that with, you know, Brewster out injured, some of their other options up front not available at the moment, that there is a bit of an over-reliance on Billy Sharp to be delivering the goods in terms of a goal scorer. You know, McBurney came into the frame in midweek, but it didn't quite happen for him. So, yeah, it's an interesting game, this one, because I thought that Swansea looked really quite good last time out in what was arguably one of their best performances of the season so far, as they put 3 goals past Bristol City. Having said that, Swansea at home and Swansea away from home have typically been two quite varying sides so far this season. Swansea in the away table are all the way down in 20th. They've come unstuck in a few matches so far. Both teams are going to look to get on the ball for this one, and so I think the possession will be fairly well shared out in that aspect. But for a score prediction, I think I'm going to edge Sheff United to get back to winning ways if Billy Sharp's back starting this match, but who knows? They're two quite tricky sides to call at the moment. I'm going to go 2-0 Sheff United. FIFA's going for a 1-1 draw. And then for the last game we got going on this weekend, we go to Stoke up against Birmingham. Stoke in a position now where they're 6 points off the playoffs and just in need of a little bit of a run of wins. They've been fairly inconsistent recently. I thought that the last time out, to be fair to them, they looked quite decent against Nottingham Forest and probably should have held on to get all 3 points in that one with the circumstances of Samba being sent off late towards that match. But back at home for this one, where they looked quite good last time against Swansea, albeit against quite an inconsistent and up and down Birmingham side who we never really quite know what we're going to get from them. I do think that we've seen an uptrend in their attacking play since the January transfer window. I think that the additions they made, particularly with some of the loan deals that they picked up, has improved them quite significantly in the final third. You know, Lyle Taylor's been on a good run of form recently. I like the link up on the left-hand side between Onel Hernandez and Jeremy Bella as well. Having said all of that, I've got a feeling that maybe Stoke might sneak this one, but Birmingham are the sort of side that can show up and, you know, score 2 or 3 goals. I'm going to go 2-1 Stoke in this game. FIFA's going 1-0 Stoke. Could go either way. But those are all the games going on this weekend, guys. I'm particularly interested to see the outcome of some of the games at the bottom. That one between Derby and Peterborough is absolutely massive. But as always, make sure to get your score predictions in the comments down below. Thanks for tuning in, though, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.